Would you sit with me for a minute? No words, no sound, just be present.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Jared Blaine. Before we jump into the official podcast, I just want to go ahead and make a couple of announcements. This episode was recorded 6-7 months ago, so there has been things that have changed. It is no longer the Sitting with Sean podcast. It is now the Recover Outloud Podcast. So just wanted to let everybody know those changes. But without further ado, let's hop in. All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Blaklist Podcast. As always, thank you for watching, listening, subscribing. Today's guest, he's a fellow podcaster, he's the host of Sitting with Sean podcast. He's a U.S. Army veteran and a peer support specialist. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Young.
What's going on, Jared? How you doing, bud?
Good, man. Thank you so much for coming on and supporting and collaborating, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I really do appreciate it. All the support that we can get, supporting one another. That's what all this podcast community is about and recovery is about.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And as if I recall, I think I just seen like your sponsored post or something come up on an ad or something, and I clicked on it and I started looking through and I was like, man, all right, I fuck with this. And so then I hit you up that same night. So
yeah. It's crazy because I never thought I'd be where I am today, 3 years ago. And just to see the journey and the transformation it's insane.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. Until people don't understand how big the recovery community actually is. Shit, I didn't know how big it is. I'm 4.5 years into this thing, and I'm just starting to venture out into, the community and just to see. So I think it's awesome. I think it really is awesome. All the creators that are out there and all the things that we're doing, and I mean, dude, it's just a never ending cycle. A lot of people I find are just through the wormhole, and it's amazing.
Yeah. I find it most astonishing that people are vulnerable, right? And they get to that place of vulnerability and they can talk about what it was like, what happened, and where they're at now with their life. And not a lot of people that are outside of the recovery community can do that.
Right.
And so that's what that's one of the things that keeps me coming back is the vulnerability. I love it. I'm more prone to live in the deep end of things. So you want to talk about feelings and emotions? I'm here. I'm your dude. You want to talk about, the fact that you might want to relapse? Here, I'm your dude. Right? I'm more comfortable in the deep end than just small talk.
No, I agree. And that's the whole reason we do this, I mean, man, is to get deep down in, and at least for me, for mine, I was like, I wanted people to know like the nitty gritty, the deep down raw emotion and what it's like living as an addict, as a recovering addict with mental health and suicidal thoughts and all these other things, and like I was telling you before, man, it's just a lot of this stuff swept under the rug, and we're not, it's like we're supposed to just not talk about it, and nah, man, like I don't agree with that whatsoever. Like we need more advocacy on it. We need to talk about it. And that's the thing, for me, I always tell people doing this is it's like a therapy session for me, like it helps me, even though it's for other people, like it helps me in the long run as well,
Absolutely. Yeah. This is essentially peer work, right? Like peer support work, what we're doing here. But if you look at how addiction is looked at and how mental health disorders are looked at, it's changed drastically over time. We used to get thrown in institutions and asylums because we were addicts or alcoholics, right? And now we have recovery centers, we have rehab centers, we have detox centers. It's amazing to see what is happening, but there's still so much work to be done.
No, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, nowadays they got centers for everything, but compared to, what it was back in the day, there's nothing,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome, man. There's so many. It was funny before I started this podcast. I was in a podcast and I was like, man, I ain't never heard of no recovery podcast. And then I started this, and then all of a sudden, all these recovery podcasts pop up. So it's actually really cool because I didn't think there was any out there, and now all of a sudden, everywhere I turn, there's a lot of other platforms out there.
Yeah, that's kind of how mine was. I was one of two recovery podcasters in all of Alaska before I moved. And
Okay.
as soon as I started that, more started popping up in the area. And I look at myself as Sean Young, right? Like just this guy, I'm in recovery. There's nothing special about me, right? But I was told that when some of the people that I work with would go out into the recovery community, people would come up and ask where I'm at. People I don't even know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit, this is
Yeah.
insane. For once, I feel like what I have to say matters.
Right. No, I agree, man. So why don't you tell me a little bit about you, a little bit about your your history and kind of what led you up to where you're at now,
Okay, so first off, my name is Sean Young. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that looks like for me is that I haven't put a substance in my body since December 7th, 2019. Working on myself and really getting that time of recovery has given me the opportunity to be a better human being, better father, better friend, better associate, better peer support worker. My life hasn't been easy. I like to say that I've seen almost every form of trauma that there is to see, with the exception of a handful. And it really shaped me into who I am now. I never looked at myself and separated the person from the disease. I always looked at myself as this is just who I am, right? I'm just this fuck up from Sharpsburg, Maryland, right? And I'm the son of an alcoholic. I'm the son of an addict. I'm the grandson of this, that, and the third. So I threw all these labels on myself. So starting out, my life has been chaotic from the start. When I was 4 years old, I keenly remember my father coming into the bathroom and looking down on the ground because I was in the tub, right? Little kids, we splash around and shit, right?
Yeah.
My dad hated that I splashed around. I made all this mess on the floor. He grabs me, beats my ass with a belt, bare ass, not dry, just wet. And so that started this unhealthy fear of authority figures for me. And so if you held a position of authority, whether it was my parent, my teacher, my principal, a police officer, I was terrified of you. And that started at that exact moment. Because of that and a few other things, child services was called on my mother and my father, and my sister and I were taken away from them, and we were put in foster care. We were picked up right away. We found this loving home, and about 6 months later, my grandparents came to pick us up, and they had gotten custody of my sister and I lived with my grandparents for about 6 years. In that time, that unhealthy fear of authority figures really was accentuated more than I would even care to think. I remember one specific time coming home from school, and I wasn't always like the best kid, but I wasn't a problem child, you know what I mean? But my grandparents are very strict, and I came home, and my grandpa just so happened to be home early from work, and he used to work at the University of Maryland as a carpenter and electrician. And so when we got home, he's sitting there, and he's at his workbench right outside our front porch, and he's just working on this 2x4. And I said, Grandpa, what you making? He said, I'm making a paddle. And I said, for who? And he said, for you.
Mm.
I'd be goddamn if you didn't break that thing over me. But there was this perpetuating unhealthy fear for authority figures and then just always wanting to be perfect. And when you put the strain on a child to be perfect, then it builds that complex, that inferiority complex of I'm never good enough and I will never be good enough. So that's where that started. And so I turned 10 years old, and my dad pretty much said, "Hey, I moved away from your mom. I live in Pennsylvania, way up north. We just got custody of you, right? So here is my problem, and I'm jumping right back into it." And so I move up to Erie, Pennsylvania with my dad, and that started a whole bunch of problems for me. A whole bunch of problems. Not only did I see my dad drinking all the time, he was driving drunk with us. He would put us in the front seat of the car, get shit faced, sit in the car or in the garage in the car with it on and the garage doors shut. Right, just crazy, fucking crazy things that you would just not imagine a normal human being going through. But like, he's not normal, right? And that's okay. So I end up developing a fear, a deep-seated fear with my father when he came to me one day and he said, your sister is not my biological daughter, so I don't have to take care of her. And so he took my sister and sent her back to my grandparents. And that was the first time that I felt true grief and loss, because like the one constant thing in my life, my sister was ripped from me, right from my hands, dude. And like, I couldn't do anything about it. I'm a kid.
Right.
And so my dad was very abusive toward my sister, and that when she was gone, that shifted to me, and it shifted so quickly. It went from emotional and mental abuse to physical abuse. So like it started with name calling. Like he would call me all kinds of derogatory names that like now people accentuate, right? Like you're gay, and that really does something to a kid. It beats the confidence up, right? Beats your mental health up, because I'm less than. And then it turned into physical with slaps on the back of the head. I remember one time I was in my kitchen. I don't remember what happened, but my dad looked at me, grabbed me by the throat, and squeezed, lifted me up like a choke slam, like Kane or Undertaker would from WWF, and lifted me above his head. And he said, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." And that was when I learned a actual fear for my father. The only reason that I'm still breathing now is because my stepmom grabbed his arm, pulled me down. And then there was other times where we would go in the backyard and he would throw me from fence post to fence post and follow up with an elbow to the back of the head. And so like, you're not just causing physical harm, by choking and all and throwing. Like now your elbow to the back of the head is causing concussions. And so it all came to a head when I turned 16. He ended up kicking me out of the house and sent me to my grandparents' house. So I spent a year there. And in the time frame of being there, I started trying to find my way, like navigate who I was as a human being. But like, you're 16, you don't know who you are, right? We there's no fathomable way, because like the brain still is developing, and it doesn't stop developing from men till the age of 23. So I'm over here trying to figure out who I am. And I know what I want to do with my life, but I got this pulling over here that says you want to be a pastor for a church. But I really wanted to join the military. And I had no understanding of what that looked like for me. So I ended up signing a contract to join the Army in April 2006. And on my birthday, July 11th, 2006, I had my first day in basic training. I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. It's kind of like a happy birthday, kid. Fuck you, right?
Yeah.
So my dad, before I joined the Army, my dad came to pick me up and take me back to the house. And before, when he went to drop me off so I could ship out, he didn't say goodbye. He didn't say I love you. He didn't say good luck. He didn't say I'm proud of you. It was literally like, you don't hold a place in my life anymore. And that was the worst, right? Because my whole childhood, I tried to gain my dad's love and gain my dad's trust and all this. And I just wasn't getting it. And so I joined the Army. and I go off to basic training. Basic training was easy for me because I lived in this chaos my whole childhood, right? It was like all the physical things didn't bother me. The screaming didn't bother me. But I was afraid of my leadership, terrified. Like I wanted it to be perfect so I wasn't on the spotlight. And so when you try to perfect things, you become you end up becoming either a complete success or a complete failure. And I started down that path of failure. I went to my advanced individual training. I stayed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that was easy for me too. It wasn't hard. And then I had a contract proposed to me to go airborne, which if nobody knows what that is, I'm jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, and that was what my career turned out to be. And so, along the lines of becoming a paratrooper, you are expected to fulfill certain things, like not just your job duties, and not just your duties as a paratrooper, but also the social duties. So I always hold this cue that the military is great at at giving people that skill of alcoholism and the disease of alcoholism. But when you become an alcoholic and you become addicted to alcohol, they treat you like a disease. And that's exactly what happened to me. My first duty station was Italy. There's no drinking age over there in Europe. So I started drinking heavily, dude. Just like the first weekend I drank you'd know me for forever. And that stayed that way for 5 months. And there was many, small times in there where I would get in trouble, but it didn't faze me because I was having this good time. Alcohol became my best friend. And I ended up getting deployed to Afghanistan. I was there for 15 months on my first deployment. I just lived in this realm of I don't care if I live or die because I have nothing to live for. My dad isn't there. My mom's not there. My sister isn't there. My grandparents aren't there. It's just me. I don't fucking care if I live or die. So I didn't get injured. I'm still here. And I get back from that deployment, and I'm not even half an hour off of the bus, and I'm back in my room getting shit faced again. And there was zero time for me to chill out. I just went balls to the wall, and it stayed that way for about a year. And anything I could drink, I would drink it like it was going out of style, like it was my last drink. And I met a woman, and I ended up falling in love with her. And she said, "If you don't quit drinking, I'm leaving." Well, I don't know if you've ever been proposed with that, but I didn't want to lose anybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I said, "All right, I'm not going to drink. I don't want to lose you." But I was still drinking, right?
Yeah.
When she wasn't there, I was drinking. So I really wasn't like, I was playing the double-edged sword, having my cake and eating it. And so I go on my second deployment with that unit, and I had something to live for, right? This woman that was in my life, I had to live for. And so I was terrified, right? Scared. I didn't want to get injured, didn't want to get hurt. But this time, all the bad shit that could happen on that deployment, close calls, all that started happening close to me, right? So I'm like, fuck, like overwhelmed, stressed, all this stuff. And then in the midst of that deployment, I found out she's cheating on me. So I lost that give a fuck, right? That goddamn button that I was pushing, the I care, I stopped pushing it. And I went on my leave from that deployment, and there was not a minute of that 18 days that I was sober. Not a single goddamn minute, dude. And if you handed it to me, whether it was a drug or an alcohol, I didn't give a shit. I was doing it.
Yeah.
And I was so drunk the whole time there that I got back to Afghanistan after 10 days of travel, and I was still drunk. And I was not able to perform my duties. And like, nobody could tell, but I knew how I felt, right? Like, it wasn't seeping out of my skin, but my brain wasn't there. So shortly after I get back, like I was the last guy to go on leave. Shortly after I get back in Afghanistan, we leave, go back to Italy. So once again, there's zero turnaround. I'm back drinking again. I end up meeting this other woman, and I fell head over heels for her. And we ended up getting married. I got stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and we had a baby, right? We had this new baby, and I was like, I don't want to raise my daughter the way that I was raised,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to be that father that she sees drunk and is like, oh, dad's drunk again, right? So I said, I'm going to quit drinking for her. But once again, I'm putting my recovery on somebody else. I'm not putting it.
Right.
And we're not going to, let's scrape that word recovery out of there. I wasn't doing anything for myself except for abstaining from alcohol. But that's soul sucking. If you've ever done that, if you've ever tried to white knuckle it or dry drunk it, dude, it's soul sucking because it takes everything out of you not to use it. Because you're not learning anything about yourself. You're just going through the motions.
Exactly. You're doing it for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I go on my third deployment. That was the worst out of all of mine. I watched my best friend die in front of me. Many of our good, some of our good guys got injured, and it took a toll on me. And actually, my best friend passing, it would take me like 10 fucking years just to get over it and be okay, to even think about him and to even talk him, say his name, any of that, dude. Like, I can do it now and be okay, but I couldn't do it. And that's the good thing about recovery. That's what helped me out in my recovery. So I get back from that deployment and I'm a completely different person this time, right? Like, I'm the shell of who I used to be. I still had emotions. I still had feelings, but I no longer had the urge or the will to be sober. So I just went back home and I was just like, deal with it. And just started drinking again. And once again, I got proposed a little bit later on down the road. If you don't quit drinking, I'm leaving. And I said, well, I don't want to fucking lose my daughter. I don't want to lose my wife. I'm going to quit drinking. I did it again. And so in that span of time, once again, I was white knuckling it, dry drunking it, dude. And my life was miserable, absolutely miserable. I was very successful at work, but my personal life was shit.
Yeah.
And I go on my last deployment with the 82nd. And that deployment gave me time to think, where I was not running missions. We weren't running missions. We weren't getting shot at. Nobody was getting blown up. So like, we had a whole bunch of time on our hands. And I sat there and I started thinking, I said, am I in love with my daughter's mom? No. Do I love her? Yeah, she's my daughter's mom. So I told her that. And I said, I want my daughter to be raised in a household where we both love, where she's loved in two different households versus hated in one. And that created this huge void in me. Like, I did it myself. I created this huge, massive void in my life. And that void wouldn't be filled for a long time either. And so when I got back from that deployment, I had to take my daughter and her mom down to Georgia. And it was just soul sucking. And not one moment from the moment that I got home up until about April of the next year was I sober, dude. Like, I was just fucking hitting the bottle like it was nobody's business, because that was my best friend. The bottom of the bottle held all my answers I needed. It didn't let me feel anything that I could remember. Just gave me all the answers, right? And so I no longer had anybody to be sober for, so I wasn't sober. And I met another woman. You see these problems that are arising? It's all me. It's all me. I'm doing this to myself. Me, another woman. It's a fucking cycle, dude. It's madness. And so, like, I meet another woman, and shortly after I meet her, she says, if you don't quit drinking, I'm leaving. And I said, well, fine. I ain't doing this. And so I get divorced from my first wife, my daughter's mom, and I end up marrying this second woman. And like, that relationship was just toxic. I was looking for somebody to fill the void that I had in my heart, and she was looking for somebody to fill the void that she had in her heart, and we just weren't fucking healthy for each other. So we were together for 3 years. I got promoted, and my list of places opened up to where I could go, and I said, hey, Alaska, let's go. So I went up to Alaska. Shortly, like a year after I got there, I still wasn't drinking. I was white knuckling. This is the longest time that I've ever been without a drink, but I still wasn't working on myself. And so I get to Alaska, and there's these health problems, these health scares that start popping up, right? Like, I'm fainting out of nowhere. I can't remember anything. My speech is all fucked up, everything like that. And so go see a doctor. They're like, hey, dude, you got TBI, you got traumatic brain injury, right? So what that means is a whole shitload of concussions. And that came from jumping out of airplanes, being on deployment, doing dumb shit, right? Just smacking my head all the time. And so I started on this pipeline of treatment where I'm working on my speech, I'm working on hand-eye coordination, I'm going to counseling, I'm working with an optometrist on my eyesight, and I'm also doing music therapy. And so, like, most people, when you say music therapy, like, what is that? You don't sit in a circle and talk about your feelings and listen to music. You play music. So I started learning how to play ukulele and the guitar and drums. I'm writing my own music, and I was doing that, and it was helping me create new neural pathways in my brain, so I could recover. But in that time, everything else started falling apart. Right, work was falling apart because they were like, "Dude, you're so fucked. We can't keep you in the Army." So they're looking at medical separation. My relationship with my second wife has fallen apart, and everything else around me is just so. Cinco de Mayo, it's crazy because tomorrow's Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo 2018, I relapsed, and that relapse lasted for a month. And in that time, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I was just drinking and going to work. Like that's what my life amounted to, was just drinking and going to work. And I woke up on May 30th, and I said, okay, well, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. Literally said, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. And I said, there's some outs. There's some outs, but I'm gonna make some phone calls, and these people don't pick up. Somebody does not pick up. I'm gonna fucking do it. And so, no shit. Drove out to a creek bed with one of my buddies, and I started drinking enough to kill a small army. And I started making phone calls, and nobody picked up, dude. I made 32 phone calls. Nobody picked up. But the 32 phone calls I made were to people in different time zones that were ahead of me that I knew were sleeping, right? Like, I self-sabotaged that much. It was that deep in my own head that I self-sabotaged. And I said, this is going to be a success because I'm going to fucking deem it a success. And so I took my truck and I ran into a tree at 70 miles an hour. And my engine block was that far away. When I came to in the hospital, and I woke up in the hospital, my soon-to-be ex-wife, the second wife, degraded me for wanting to kill myself. And then my chain of command, same thing. I ended up getting released from the hospital. I had some abrasions on my eyes and stuff like that. Other than that, I was okay. And I get to this point later that day, I'm like, I need some goddamn help, dude. Because like, it's bad. If I'm trying to kill myself, it's bad. So I went inpatient at the hospital on base, and I stayed there for 11 days. It was great. I didn't have to worry about nobody, just myself. And I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy. It was great. But when I was released, I had to go back to that, right? I had to go back to work. I had to go back to to a household of my soon-to-be ex-wife, right? Like, just, I didn't feel like I belonged. But I held on to that, and I just kept this hope that it's going to get better. I got divorced October of 2018, and shortly after that, I met another woman, another time. And every single one of my relationships that I've been in, there's been a different reason. And this one was because I deemed her as broken, right? I deemed her as, she needs help and I can fucking fix her. Dude, I can't even fix myself, Jared. How can I fix somebody else?
Yeah.
And so, I get to this point where we're like, her and I are like rapidly moving our relationship to the next phase. Just fucking boom, boom, boom. By May of the next year, we're married. And I'm out of the Army at that time. I'm facing this identity crisis of like, I had 12 and a half years in service, and I did all these badass things in the Army, and now I'm just relegated to sitting at home. I don't have a job. Not that I'm not trying, just nobody's fucking hiring me. And then I ended up getting this job in April. I was working at this air cargo company in customer support. And if you know veterans, like combat veterans, and working around other people,
Yeah.
We
True.
don't enjoy that, right? But that's the only place that will fucking hire me. And so like I had to force this smile on my face, but everybody at work was terrified of me. There's this big ass bearded dude who, for all intents and purposes, they know is a combat veteran. He's not very talkative to people. So I made myself I excluded myself from a lot of things. And so July 4th, 2019 rolls around and I fed myself the lie for the very last time. My uh, then wife looked at me and said, "Do you think that you're okay to drink?" And I said, "I think I'm all right to drink." And I relapsed again. And I relapsed hard. And that one lasted for 6 months. And that 6 months, dude, it started out small because I fed myself the lie because I tried to justify, right? I said, I'm in a different relationship. I'm no longer in the army. I lied and I said, I love myself. I didn't love myself. I hated who I was. And I literally justified my use, which we've all done.
Yeah.
And I got to this point where I said, fuck it, man, whatever. And I said, I'm just going to have one. Well, we know what happens with one. One turns to 5. And I had 5 that night. And then the next night I had 10. And then the next night after that, I was just fucking going. Just going to town. Back at the races, dude. And that lasted for 6 months. And in that 6 months, I accumulated so many call offs from work because I was sick. I was half-assing my job. Everybody around me started not liking me, and I didn't like myself. December 7th was the last time that I put a substance in my body, 2019. And it's just like every other day, every other Friday, drove home from work, stopped by the gas station. I was like, I got a little extra money because I got a raise. I'm going to get 2 bottles instead of 1. So I got 2 bottles, drove home. As soon as I got in my driveway, cracked the first one open, boom. I hadn't eaten all day. And it was just crazy. And I went inside and I started drinking. And I came to outside of my house at like midnight with no shirt on in December in Alaska. It's fucking cold, dude. I have no business being outside with no shirt on.
Yeah.
And I know I'm mad. Like I can feel it coursing through my veins. Like I'm fucking angry. Don't know why. I walk inside. My house is a disaster. It looks like somebody came and with a baseball bat and just broke everything. And I look down the hallway and my roommate's laying down on the floor.
Oh shit.
And I'm like, well, I know I'm fucking angry, so I'm getting out of here. And I got in the car and left. The next day I was told that I beat the shit out of my roommate, which I'm not a violent person. So that was a characteristic for me. And I was like, well, if that happened, then I got to turn myself in. So I called the Anchorage Police Department and I said, hey, man, like I fucked up. I'm being told this is what happened. I don't remember it. So they handcuffed me, put me in jail. And I spent 20 days in jail. When I was in jail, dude, I blamed everybody for my problems. My dad was the problem because he was an alcoholic and he put me on this path. My mom, she's an addict, hereditary disposition, right? My wife's the problem because she allowed me to drink. My roommate's the problem because he could have stopped me from, like, literally just blamed everybody, except for myself. I had this old native man look at me, and in jail they called me Viking, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, Viking, shut the fuck up. You created all these problems in your life. When you accept that, you'll be okay. Now, if we know anything about recovery, acceptance is the answer to all of our problems.
First step.
Yes. And so at first I looked at him and I said, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you to tell me this? Right. And then I went in my cell and I really thought about it. I was like, no, this man's right. Like I created all these problems. This vicious cycle I'm in, it's not going to break until I break it. And as soon as I said that, as soon as I accepted that, my bail got posted. Like I'm not even shitting you. My bail got posted that day.
Wow.
Electronic monitoring came, slapped my bracelets on me, and I was released from jail. And that's where my recovery started. I entered into what's called therapeutic court. So it's like a drug court or mental health court down here. And my perm was 9 months. And so in that 9 months, I did group therapy. I did individual counseling. I started taking meds to help balance out this thing. But also I was getting connected with sober community, right? Getting connected with veterans that I knew where I was at mentally and emotionally. I was going to AA. I was just doing everything that I could get my hands on to gain sobriety. And my the judge that oversaw my case, looked at me and he said, "Okay, you've been sober many other times before. What makes this time any different?" And I said, "I have to do it for myself." I said, "If I do it for anybody else, it's not going to work."
Yeah.
I've done that. I've fucking done that before and it never worked. And I coined this statement, and it actually it's a foreshadowing. But I said, "God forbid my family leaves me. Like, I'm gonna have nobody to be sober for." And so, I I go through my program 9 months, not a dirty UA, not I didn't fuck up none of that. I just literally was nose to the grindstone, get it done, and I got it done. On the back end, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, right? Like, I know what the tools and skills are that I was taught, but I just don't know what to do. And so I had one of my counselors reach out to me, and he said, "Hey, man, you'd be a great peer support specialist." And I said, "Well, what is that?" And he goes, "But I don't know." So how the fuck are you gonna tell me I'd be a great peer support specialist? You don't even know what the fuck it is, right?
Yeah.
So, but he was like, here's the number for the state trainer. Call her and get scheduled for this class. So I did that, and it was one of the biggest blessings in my recovery. I learned a lot about not just recovery, but about myself, and that at the end of the class we had to share our story. I've never shared my story before. I was so terrified, dude. Like, I was just like, fuck. Everybody's going to see me the way that I see myself, as a piece of shit, right? Because I still hated myself. I still don't love who I was. And so when it came time to share our story, the instructor said, "Okay, who wants to go first?" I raised my hand. She was like, "All right, man, go ahead." Mind you, I got sober during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So isolation was great for me because I was fucking used to isolating. So I shared my story, and on the back end, I was waiting for people to say, "You're a piece of shit," and I got met with nothing but love, dude. And it was just like this amazing transformative moment for me, where I realized that I'm worth it, and I'm worthy of love, and I'm worthy of all that. But I didn't really believe it, right? So I get back in my relationship. Everything is going good. I'm thinking everything is going good. And then December last year, she packed her bag up and the kids, and she left. And it rocked me to my foundation, not only because my wife left, right? But like, I was all alone with my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions in this house that her and I built. And yeah. But the one thing that I always told people I worked with was life doesn't stop when you get into recovery. Life gets fucking harder, right? Because all these tools and skills that you're taught are in best case scenarios, right? You have to use practical application when the shit gets hard. And for me, that was a huge trigger. Was because I had this feeling like something bad was going to happen. So I sat there and I processed it, and not a single fucking moment did relapse come in my brain.
Right.
The only thing that was in my brain was I have to stay sober. I have to be okay for myself, because if I'm not going to be okay for anybody else. And so I literally lived up my phone. I called everybody in my sober support network, and I ended up getting in contact with a good buddy of mine, and he said, "I can't sit here and watch you pretty much mentally and emotionally drown." He's like, "You got to get out of there, even if it's 4 months." So I packed a bag and I flew to my dad's house in West Virginia with the intent of staying here for a month. And I got here and I found out some pretty unsavory things about my relationship. And I decided there's no going back to that life. I can't go
Yeah.
back to it. So I decided to stay, and I live in West Virginia now. I have a friend that told me, write down everything that you want out of a partner. And I did. I met somebody, and she checks all the boxes, and I'm taking it slow. Taking it for the first time in my life. I'm taking it slow.
Yeah.
I'm pacing things. and she understands recovery. She gets it. She doesn't judge me for my past. She knows my past. I've been very transparent about it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So life has been wild, dude.
Do you think this is kind of a double question. One, does the military do they have like reasonable resources for mental health and addiction? And do you think if they did have it at one point, that would have helped you?
Well, so the first part they do, but it's not very good, right? So there's a program called the Army Substance Abuse Program, and essentially, if you feel like you have a problem, or you piss hot on your analysis, you're allowed to go, and they send you there as a precautionary thing to getting out of the army or to facing punishment by the army. But if you don't want to be there, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to be there. I've been, I went there 4 times. I didn't want to fucking be there. You know why I didn't want to be there? Because they wouldn't let me drink. They said, "Hey, you cannot drink while you're in this program." And I was like, "Well, this sucks."
Right.
I didn't want it. Had I wanted to be there and had I had a cohesive thought, then it would have worked for me. But it didn't.
Yeah, that was always the biggest thing that I heard, is that, the military doesn't have that great of resources, when it comes to mental health and in addiction and whatnot, and so, and if you think about it, man, like there's a lot of veterans that, they deploy, they come back, they got PTSD, now they're addicted to either drugs or alcohol or something, and it's just kind of like, what does the military do? They just, give you a big fuck you or like what?
Pretty much, and then on top of that, like there's that stigma, right? There's a stigma out of the military, but there's a stigma in the military, right? And it was huge, and it just didn't go for mental health and addiction; it went for physical health too. It was like if it's broke, get it fixed, but if you get it fixed, you're a bitch, and
Mm,
that is a stigma that has to end. It has to end. And I was one of those people that believed in that, right? I believed in that bullshit that was fed. And I tore my meniscus on my last deployment, and I got to a point where I couldn't walk, and I had to go in for surgery. And after that, I realized like how crucial it is to give yourself that proper time to heal, not just mentally or not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. And it even was perpetuated like when I got into recovery, dude, because like I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't doing anything for myself. All those times that I had gotten clean,
yeah.
I was just white knuckling it, dude. And like now I work on myself and I face that fucking demon that stares at me from the hole, dude. And I
Yeah.
enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a sadist. Who knows?
I mean, your recovery, I tell this to anybody, your recovery's got to come first. You got to be
Yeah.
selfish with your recovery because, I've always had this saying is, whatever you put before your recovery is the first thing you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, and it's actually like on point. We can't be complacent in our lives where, people think that, oh yeah, we're 3 years, 4 years, how many every years, and now that I'm sober, like I don't have to do anything. It's like no, like you got to treat every day as if it's day one. That's for me at least. Even 4.5 years sober, I still got to treat every single day as if it's day one because I know if I get complacent and I get too comfortable, I'm going to stop working on myself and I'm going to start noticing thoughts in my mental health and, cravings and this and that, and it's just, you know, man, life is not easy once you get sober. People think like, oh, I stopped doing drugs and alcohol. Like, nah, bro, like life is
That's half the battle.
exactly like, everybody knows getting sober is the easy part. Staying sober is the hard part.
Yeah.
And you gotta want it, man. Like again, with my ex-wife, I was faced with that, you want me and the kids, you need to stop, and it's just like, and you say it because you're going to go through the motions, but nah, man, like if you don't want it for yourself, it ain't gonna happen. No matter if we tell you 80,000 times, like, I mean, you're living proof, man, that
Yeah.
multiple times.
Yeah, dude. There was times where I was sober. I didn't want to be sober, right? Like I didn't fucking want it. I was too afraid to lose somebody. And through this whole process, man, I've learned so goddamn much about myself, right? And you had mentioned how if you stop working on yourself, if you take a break, take a law, like you're not thinking of day one. And I agree, man. Like there's a transition period from when I moved from Alaska to down here where I was still unsure of everything. And then I made that decision, like I'm staying. And I can definitely tell the difference in my mental health because I wasn't going to a counselor, not by choice, but I couldn't see my counselor in Alaska because I was here in West Virginia. And then as soon as I made that decision, I was like, counselor up. Boom.
Yeah.
And I got in contact with a counselor, got enrolled, and was seen that like the next week. And I still work with that counselor. I enjoy it because even if life is great, life
Yeah.
fucking happens, dude. Things happen in your week, and it brings stress up.
Yep. I just started seeing a counselor for my mental health, is because it's not because you're a bitch or anything. It's just because like, dude, like, let's admit it. Like for me, I'm fucked up in my head, and it's like, just because I do this, man, I tell people I don't got it all together. Yeah, I may be sober and I do a podcast and I'm a recovery advocate and all that, but dude, don't look at me like I got it all together because I don't, and people have, they seem to forget that, like we're human beings, man.
Yeah.
Just because we're out there putting our face out there and advocating and all that, we still deal with shit just like everybody else.
Oh
you
yeah.
know so
Yeah.
I see a mental health counselor. I'm starting next week to see a substance counselor, and I'm sober, and it's just to continue to keep working on yourself, and just keeping yourself in check.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. I don't. There's times I don't want to do it. Right. There's days where I'm like, fuck, I got to talk to the counselor today. But those are the days that I do it that I need it the most. Is the days I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
On top of that, I run a veterans processing group for justice involved veterans in Alaska. I'm working with Baltimore as well, but I work with the veterans in Alaska, and it's crazy time difference, right? Because it's 11 o'clock here when my meeting starts and it's 7 there, but I always get something I need out of it, and it's just this amazing thing. And then the podcasting, dude, I didn't even think about it. One of my guests brought it up, and he was like, "Podcasting is part of your recovery program," and I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're hearing from other alcoholics and addicts. That is what recovery is all about." And I was like, "You are 100% correct.
Yeah.
This is," and he's not even an addict. He's not an alcoholic. I was just like mind blown that he said that. And so, yeah, I mean, dude, podcasting has become a part of my recovery program.
So speaking of the podcasting, so what led you to get into it? What led you to start doing it?
Oh man, about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, I wanted to share my story on a national platform, right? Somewhere where I could just like my goal is to share my story in front of at least 10,000 people.
Oh,
Minimum.
yeah. Right.
That's my fucking goal, right? At least. But I wanted to be able to give myself and other people a platform to share their story, right? And so I didn't know how to do it, right? I didn't have a microphone. I had a microphone, but I didn't have headphones. I didn't have didn't have StreamYard. But I went on a buddy's podcast. He invited me on, and we talked about spirituality and about paranormal stuff because I love paranormal shit. And on the back end afterwards, we met up, and he's like, "Dude, you got a voice for podcasting." He's like, "You can carry on a conversation. You're very personable. You should be a podcaster." And I was like, "You literally are answering every question that I have right now, dude." And I said, "I just don't know how to do it." And I started making excuses. I said, "Well, I don't have a good microphone. I watch all these podcasts where they got these gnarly ass microphones that hang from the ceiling and shit,
Yeah.
right? Voice changers and everything." And he was like, "You don't need that." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, I don't have headphones. He's like, "You can use your Xbox headphones. These are Xbox headphones." And then I was like, "Okay." And then he was like, I was like, I just don't know where I would stream from. And he's like, StreamYard. So this dude literally coach mentored and trained me. I released a few episodes. He watched them and he gave me notes, critiqued it. Like, and I mean, like, he gave me constructive criticism and I loved it. He wasn't a dick about it. But this
Right.
man set me on this path where I was like, this is what I want to do with my time and my energy. Because I want to give my time and my energy to other people for a certain period of time, not all my time and energy, but give my time and energy to other people so that they can share their story of recovery, whatever their recovery looks like, whether it's mental health recovery, substance abuse recovery, whatever. Dude, I'm here for it. Doctors, counselors, what have you. We all have something going on.
Yeah.
Everybody's had a form of trauma.
Um, so you've been doing about a year. Obviously you're killing it because I'm just seeing I haven't even gotten through a portion of your stuff, but man, I love it.
Thank you.
It's awesome, and I think it's really cool. It's kind of the same way when I starting this, and it's just, just we want to let people know, man, if you and I could do it, they can do it, and to give them that hope and that light and that inspiration, that they're not the only ones dealing with this shit.
No. There's 7 billion people in the world, close to that, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's a greater portion of humanity that suffers from mental health
Yep.
disorders as well as substance abuse disorders. There's a lot of people that are in the criminal justice system that suffer from mental health disorders that aren't treated, aren't diagnosed. There's a lot of people that in the criminal justice system that have substance abuse disorders. Right? If we give them that outlet to share their story, if we say, hey, it's possible. Not that it's going to be easy, because none of this fucking path has been easy.
Right.
It's been painful, but everything that is worth it in the end is going to be, you're going to go through some pain.
So what do you got for the future? Anything you can share? What are you looking towards?
Yeah. So, actually, well, by the time this is aired and everybody sees it, it's going to be in the past. But tomorrow I go speak at a men's mental health summit conference virtual thing for NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness, and it's me and two other podcasters, which is pretty sick,
Nice.
pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
And so we're doing that. And I have about 5 months worth of content I pumped out. I'm starting 2 new projects on my podcast. I'm not straying away from the mental health and substance abuse stuff, but I'm gonna change it up and do something different and come back to it. So I have one that's going to be called I Believe, and it's going to be about people's belief structures and their higher powers, right? Because I'm Norse pagan. I believe in the Norse gods, but I have friends that are Christian, and I have friends that are Satanist, and I have friends that are from all walks of life. And I want to hear why they got into those roles and what they're doing now. And there's a second one. It's kind of comedic. It's going to be a little lighthearted. It's going to be called the Veterans Nut Bucket Society. And I'm going to be bringing vets on from all around the world, talking about some funny stories. Because you guys see the serious side of us all the time. You guys hear the serious stories. I want to hear some of the more funny stories. So
Yeah.
the lighthearted shit. And then how their transition out of the military was, because it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And then what they're doing now with their life. I think it's very important to highlight those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Yeah, because like you said, you're right on. Like every time we hear about somebody in the military, it's all about war and deployments and people dying and all that. And it's like, I think, man, majority of my family's military, and I hear it all the time. But I think it's time to kind of shy away from that. Flip it on the flip side, and like start hearing those positive, uplifting, things. It's kind of change the frame of mind, so not always stuck in that mind frame.
Oh, absolutely. I see a lot of veterans that all they identify as is a veteran, right? And that's a label. That's cool, whatever. And that's okay. You can be, I'm proud of my service, but I don't stick to that label or that subscription as I'm just a veteran, because I'm so much more than that, right? Not saying I'm better than anybody else, because I'm not. I'm not better than Jared. Jared's awesome. Jared's the shit. Jared is awesome. But, uh, you know, I'm so much more than just a veteran. I'm so much more than an alcoholic. I'm so much more than a person with substance abuse disorders and mental health disorders, dude. I'm so much more than that. And I think that as a society, if we start looking at ourselves without the labels, we'll start to see ourselves in a much better light.
There you go, man. What do you think? So what is like kind of like your routine to help you stay on track with your mental health and, in your recovery, like what do you do is there something you do on the daily?
Yeah, dude. So I go on walks just about every day, depending on the weather. It's kind of weird. I don't know if you've seen it. I posted up a video, a TikTok on Facebook, but I go to cemeteries. I walk around cemeteries. And a lot of people think that that's weird. I don't do it at nighttime, right? And I'm not sacrificing animals or people to the dark lord, to the dark overlord. Okay. I go there and I look at the gravestones and I look at them, not for the names. I look at them for the dates. And I think that is pretty cool because where I'm at now, a lot of the headstones predate the American Civil War. And then there's some that predate America being established as a country. And I think that is insane, but also it brings me the sense of humility that any time I can cease to exist, right? At any time I can just be a headstone. And so that brings me back to center, and it centers me. I meditate a lot. I fucking meditate a lot all the time. I do counseling. I do my group therapies. I podcast, but I also take time for myself. Not just like the self-care stuff, but I take time for myself. In this phase of my life, dude, I have never been more healthy. I have never eaten more healthy than I do now. I'm more hygienic than I've ever been. I make sure that I'm clean. I couldn't say that shit a year ago. I was still deep in a fucking depression, right? But I'm taking care of myself every single day. And I'm doing something for myself, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's playing a video game, because I love video games, dude. I love video games, or watching a movie, or just spending time with the people that matter the most to me, because I haven't been afforded that opportunity in a very long time.
Yeah, we all gotta have that outlet of something, aside from this, and it's like, mine's music. I play instruments, and I've written music since I was, a kid. And so for me, like, that's my thing, that's my stress releaser, and stuff that I do on the daily. So yeah, we got to have something to keep us grounded,
Absolutely.
And I think it's important. Last thing before we wrap up. So what's your one piece of advice to somebody was in your shoes, right now, and they're just kind of looking for, that next step, some form of hope, man? Just, what do you say?
Do it for your goddamn self. Fuck everybody else. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Fuck everybody else. Because at the end of the day, you have to wake up to you. You have to go to bed with yourself, and you got to wake up to your face in the mirror. Do it for yourself. You're worth it. You're worthy of love. You are lovable. People love you. People care about you. Now it's okay for you to love yourself and care about yourself and take care of yourself.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing, like, like you said, that you got to be selfish in your recovery. Your recovery's got to come first. It's got to come before your kids, before your wife, before your job, before anything. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, you say fuck everybody else, and that's exactly great. It's not to be in a rude way, but it's like, no, like, we are allowed to be selfish when it comes to our mental health and our recovery.
Yeah, dude, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in an argument over the fact that, like, I'm going to a meeting when I've already met my mandated meetings to go to, right? Because, and I said it like this is my recovery. This is about me. You can take care of whatever you've got to take care of, but for me, I need a fucking meeting.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Like, it's got to be about you, for you, because if it's not for you, we can't be ourselves for anybody else, Mm-hmm. And that's the cold hard truth about it, man, is we got to do it for us. So, tell everyone where we can find your podcast at, your socials. We'll post all the links in the description when we post the video, but where can we find that?
Yeah, man, you can find my podcast Sitting with Sean on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Just look up Sitting with Sean, and I'm right there. My big ass beard in your face. You can search me up on Facebook, Sean Young. The spelling is super easy, and I'm there. I also have my Sitting with Sean Facebook page. Instagram, same thing. I don't get on Instagram much. I primarily do it because it trickles down to Facebook. Like, let's be real here. I don't get on Twitter very much. I have a Twitter account, but I don't get on Twitter much. That's a black hole, really. But TikTok, you can find me on TikTok at the Beard of West Virginia, or WV.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put all those links in the description, and we'll make sure everyone has access to that. But yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on, taking the time out of your day to chat with us, and I'm looking forward to those who don't know. I'll hear eventually. I'll be on Sean's podcast as well, sharing my story. So once we get that dialed in,
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's just, man, this is awesome. Like, it sucks I have to put a time limit on these things, bro, because I could talk forever about these, But it's like,
dude, I was at a meeting today for the thing tomorrow, and the guy was like, well, how much time do you want? I was like, dude, if you want 2 hours, I can talk for 2 hours. If you want 20 minutes, I can give you 20 minutes, whatever you want.
Yeah, no, that's what we're here for, And anybody watching this, if anyone's struggling with anything, you can reach out to Sean. You can reach out to myself. You got a whole group of people here that love you, that care about you, and we've been through the damn thing, and we're still going through it, and day or night, hit us up on the inbox, and we're here.
I willingly give out my phone number because I don't always check Messenger, but my phone is always fucking.
Yeah. No, yeah. All right, man. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you again, man, for coming on. Please go listen to Sitting with Sean. Show him some love. Remember, we recover out loud for those suffering in silence. And until next time, we love you, and peace.